You're listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to championing everyday men and supporting you in getting more from life, love, and the everyday. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and the aim of this podcast is pretty simple: to support you in building rock-solid foundations, legendary integrity, and kick-ass relationships, with plenty of stories, a load of lessons, and a solid dose of some loving straight talk. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I am your host, Mike Campbell, and today I am pumped to be bringing you this guest that I have. This has been, for me, a little while in the making, and potentially one of the more nervous pre-episode recording experiences that I've had. And let me give some context to that. Today, I'm bringing you Mr. Ardie Savea, current All Black fucking all-star, and very recent All Black captain. If you don't live in New Zealand or this part of the world, and perhaps you're from North America, then maybe you know who the All Blacks are. I suggest you look them up and look up this man. Ardie Savea is an absolute force on the rugby field, and what I believe is an absolute force off it. I have watched him and witnessed him and admired him for some time now, both as a rugby player, most definitely. You know, there's the geeky little 12-year-old kid in me always, but also as a man. How this dude shows up in the world now, we speak about it in this podcast. It's one of those things where you know, in New Zealand, to give perhaps a picture to others, but you'll probably connect to something as an example and from where you're from. There is often and historically been an idea of, you know, what the ideal man or what a man should be. And for a long time, that has carried the ideas of this big, strong, stoic kind of dude who can do everything and fix everything and handle everything and doesn't have emotions, doesn't show any kind of weakness, is ever capable, is like fucking Superman, you know, everything to everyone, and isn't really impacted by anything. Doesn't show signs of weakness because doesn't have them. Some kind of inhumane, ever capable, extremely strong robot type thing when you think about it. And in New Zealand, the All Blacks were always kind of there, you know, tag on to the back of that historically, perhaps a farmer, you know, those kind of strong, not affected by anything, can do all the things kind of guy. Enter 2021 and you have gentlemen like Ardie who are leaders, I think, very much so, among men who are warriors who go into battle for their job, you know, every day, so to speak, but also has this compassion and kindness of spirit and goodwill and style of generous leadership, you know, connection and connection to community, and it would seem a desire to support people in his community and those around him and influence for the good. And I see that in some of the things that I've read about him and, you know, that he posts in his own social medias. And that's, I suppose, one of the beautiful things that we get to do these days is witness athletes and those in the public eye, not just through the lens of the media and traditionally in the forms that it can be, which is however the person writing stories and those in charge of those outlets want to tell them, but how the athletes themselves want to share them. And that's why I'm so pumped to bring you this interview, because here's a dude who is this different version of what a man can be, of what an All Black can be, you know, strong and soft, a leader with heart and backbone. And we dive into some of the real shit. We dive into the story of Ardie Savea. We talk about his journey to where he is and the lessons that he's had, and, you know, him working through his own shit, diving into healing his, you know, past experiences that caused him to have behaviors and create outcomes in his life that weren't favorable, that were annoying, that were frustrating him, that weren't, you know, that were causing detrimental outcomes in his life and his relationships. And we explore, this idea of manhood in part, but we also really dive into who he is as a man and how he chooses to show up. And I absolutely loved it. And I'm hugely grateful for his time and his generosity in sharing this stuff. And so Ardie's got a few strings to his bow. He's this man, the rugby player, the All Black, sometimes captain and absolute all-star. He also, is a strong a strong and active participant in his community, and a community that he chooses to create. And he also has a clothing company, which has this whole other element of purpose to it, where the messages in the clothing are really cool. And so what I want to read you now is the story from Ardie Savea Clothing, which I think sums him up really, which makes sense when you think about it's his clothing company. And it is this: at Ardie Savea, we want to inspire youth and their families to embrace uniqueness, to empower people to be truly and authentically happy. It's simple. Happy humans mean better people. Better people build better communities. Better communities for us, for our children, and for their children to come. So I'm just going to insert myself here. If you're new to me and my work, this is fucking what I'm about, bro. Happy humans, happier men mean better people. Better men mean better communities. I absolutely believe that men, we have the power to lead. And when we can focus on our own shit, we can become better for those people in our lives, our families, our communities, and the world. Back to Ardies. We might be the new now, but our dream is that every generation after us uses them and adds to their foundation. Everyone can contribute something, no matter how big or small. I recognize I am unique. I embrace me. I want to be the new, to be the leader of a generational change amongst my family and most loved friends. Show my children that by being the most true self, I am the happiest version of me. Show them that I am what I dream to build. I can. It is sustainable. And when it's their time, I can hand it onto them and they build onto it, and so on with their children. Every generation's uniqueness adds to the Ardie Savea story. I love that. And there's this line that he kind of uses in there, which brings me back to a line that he used a few times, which I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on when you listen to this podcast episode. He says, amongst my family and most loved friends. We talk about this idea of your main thing. Make sure that your main thing is your main thing. There's an invitation there both to get clear on what's my main thing, and then also to continually step into making that your main thing, prioritizing the shit in your life that's important to you. So today I talked to Ardie Savea. It was fucking cool. I think this man's an absolute bloody legend and a representation of this idea that I have of the everyday legend, this modern version of Zeus energy. If you're new here, I hope you enjoy this. Please make sure wherever you find your podcast, click like, subscribe, download, all that kind of stuff. Leave us a review. It helps us get this in front of more men that could use this stuff. It's inspiration, these lessons, this loving straight talk. Otherwise, that's it from me. Let's pass on to the conversation with Ardie. Enjoy the show. Ardie Savea, welcome to the Everyday Legends podcast, brother. It is wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, brother. It's an honor to be on here, kind of helping me out, kill time in MIQ in Auckland.
Beautiful. I'm sure we'll make sense of that. So, Ardie, look, there's quite likely plenty of people who listen to this who know very well who you are, and there might be some who have no idea at all. So can you just kind of start us off and please take us anywhere you want with this question? Who is Ardie Savea?
Ardie Savea, obviously people know me because I'm an athlete, play some code, some footy, obviously for the All Blacks and the Hurricanes and the Lions. But first and foremost, I'm a husband and I'm a father to Saskia, Kobe, and Keon, and born and bred in Wellington. Grew up there, lived there now. Probably look to stay there for the rest of my life. But yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell who I am. Obviously, have an older brother, one sibling, and mum and dad are, still alive, gratefully. But yeah, pretty simple, man. Pretty simple dude. But that's who I am, man.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that. And yeah, so as you said, into those who are listening potentially in North America, play some code, play some footy. That's rugby down in this part of the world for the All Blacks. You've just got back from the other side of the world, including the US. And so obviously, you're this dude who's very much in the public eye in certain worlds, obviously, and not in others. New Zealand, it's a small place in the big scale of things, and rugby is pretty central in there. So for you, as you said, I'm getting there's a simplicity to how you approach things, but can you kind of talk us through how you, I suppose, navigate that, public eye life, right? Where there's scrutiny and there's the media and all that. And then there's this dude who's Ardie. He's a husband and a father.
Yeah. Like, it's a funny one, man. Like, because obviously, like, you obviously, and as a kid, you always want to be famous. You watch all the American shows and the artists, and you want the accolades and stuff. And it's funny how you get to that stage where you're getting that and you're like loving it. Like the instant gratification of people. Ardie, can I get an autograph? And you start to love it. And then I think with my whole journey, it's like I've gone full circle where I don't love it. I used to love it for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? Like, but now I love it because my mindset is that if I can make someone smile or make someone's day, and getting a photo of them, signing an autograph, I'm happy. Like, even and social medias, I feel like I can use that as a platform to encourage and make people smile in any way. So how I deal with that is that's kind of my mindset. In terms of obviously the trolls and that's the probably negative side of social channels is it gives a platform to people to kind of show their true colors and who they really are and just troll people. And I think I don't have the answers, bro. And I'm probably still journeying through that now. Like, I thought I could deal with it, but there's times, mate, where you just scroll through and you just see some stuff or an article, like, and it hits you a little bit, And, so I've just got a good crew around me. I'm able to talk to them. I'll just call them when I'm upset or with my wife and just chat. And I find that helps me, and they kind of affirm and encourage and kind of, just what people do is that, like what they say is they like, that's just them and it's not about you. So that's how I kind of deal with being in the public eye. I embrace it, bro. Like, like I remember when I was a kid and, if I had guys like Jonah Lomu coming up to me or having that access to him, it would be a dream come true, So I know I'm not at that caliber, but I know that, some people, looked up to me and that's just part of the gig. So I try and embrace it, man. And obviously, like you say, it's not at the massive scales of, the LeBrons and that, because it'll be too hectic. But, in small New Zealand, we're pretty much like, it's all community and everyone's pretty chill. So it's not too bad, but yeah, man, embrace it. Love it. Sometimes it gets like too much, especially when I'm out with my wife and my kids for dinner. But, even when I say no, my wife tells me off and says, hey, like don't be that guy. So like whatever my wife, she kind of checks me and making sure that like when I'm in a grateful position to be where I am. And
yeah, nice. Yeah, and I can only imagine the challenges in there, right? Because you're a human, so stories and trolls and comments and so on impact you, right? Just because you're in the public eye, we often have this expectation of, especially warriors, right? We send you into battle, win and kill everyone and all the things, and then also be a perfect human in all those other moments. And so you're a human, and it's going to be hard to navigate that, especially for anyone, right? We haven't necessarily learned those skills. And then there's also like I want to have boundaries sometimes and be able to say no to people and protect this time with my family or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and I've come to learn how to do that because I'm a say yes man, bro. I never want to hurt people's feelings, and I'll just do it even though I'm hating it. I'll just do it. But there's times where I've just learned to say no in a nice way. I'm like, hey bro, like not now. I'm just out, just trying to enjoy myself. and people like, they respond to that really well. They're like, bro, I
Mm.
get it, thank you, you know. And that's just that's just what I've learned through the journey so far.
Yeah, I can only imagine the journey through to that point, especially, yeah, as you say, you know, someone growing up wanting that on some level, right? And there's potentially the fame, but there's also, I would say, on a simple level, the success of seeing, you know, in this real example, and for those outside of this part of the world, seeing the black jersey and striving for that, right? And that's one thing, and there's potentially all the other stuff that comes with it. But there's this
Trust
thing
me,
that you
man,
said
like,
in there. Sorry, where you go?
Oh yeah, sorry, bro. No, I was just saying, like people, you know, like they like they were like the fame and the accolades and stuff like that. Like, it's not what it's all out to be made, you know. Like, sometimes in my head, I say, like, I wish people get to or experience, you know, like some of the things I've experienced, or have all the money in the world, because it's not, it helps, and it plays a part in happiness, but like, if you don't have the right values, then it's not the be all end all. And sometimes, you know, and that's the trolls, you know, they like, we do this, or we saying we miss our families because we've been away for 15 weeks. You know, you get the troll saying, oh mate, well, he should be all good, he's earning X amount. Like, you know, but like, you take away any human away from their families for 15 weeks, there's going to be some bound of feelings of missing them. Doesn't matter how much money you make, how famous you are, that's just the human side of it. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah,
absolutely, bro. And I think it's an easy barb to throw from the cheap seats, right? But it does, the what that is essentially saying is money or public adulation or some kind of fame should you know, keep our hearts happy and should do the job of missing our families. I mean, that's a pretty cold way to live life, if that's you know, perhaps where you would be ending up, right? And you know, anyone, doesn't matter fame or not, take them away from their support and all that kind of stuff, man, that's challenging. And I think that must be a real challenge, and hopefully that can invite some empathy, some compassion, some humanity, right? And looking at that stuff. Especially if, you know, on the other side of that conversation, again, we want you to perform and do all the things. Well, how does anyone perform in whatever it is that they're tasked with in life, is being a fuller, nourished, you know, human, right? And that is our relationships, our family, all those things as well, right?
Yeah.
So, bro, you said in there earlier, and I think I'm getting it through a lot of that, is, you know, around community and so on. And there's there's a term that's central to this podcast, which is the everyday legend. Now, that for me, that is kind of like my modern interpretation, let's say, of something that I've learned in my geeky little travels, called Zeus energy. That the ancient Greeks had this term, and this idea of Zeus energy was encapsulated in, I've got notes, because sometimes I can remember this, sometimes I can't. Intelligence, robust health, goodwill, compassionate decisiveness, and generous leadership. And it was looked upon as male authority accepted for the sake of the community. And so for me, you know, I look at that and I think, man, that's something I think every man can really strive for, regardless of who he is and his story and all that kind of stuff, because there's an individuality to that. And so that's kind of where a lot of my work, my secret little missions are kind of based around, and where this term everyday legends kind of comes about. And then I get to work with men and you know, diving into that, exploring it and expanding into it for themselves. And also I see men out there in the world. And for me, I look at you and I see as someone who is embodying that. Now, you've probably never heard that before, right? So it's not as though it was a choice at some point. I'm going to get this term and I'm going to live it. But, you know, it's, as you said before, the values that you have are very central, right? And so for me, I see this man who is embodying this. You know, you don't just lead men to battle, let's say, on the rugby field, but how you lead in your community. You know, I see you doing all sorts of things, from content that you post, you know, your clothing brand and the messages that come out with the clothing brand. I also see in the past that you've led, you know, like simple community fitness sessions and stuff like that, which is just beautiful, right? Which is giving access to people, you know, as we say that when you're a kid, oh man, here's this dude, he's an All Black, and you're like, hey, let's all come and work out, right? A simple way to really show up in community. And it's something that you choose to be how you show up as a man. So I do want to kind of dive into that. You know,
Yep.
I understand that we've potentially got that, you know, New Zealand humility at play, so you might not want to speak to that.
Yeah.
But what I'd love to explore is what I kind of got earlier was that hasn't necessarily always been the way, right? Coming into this, the motivations were a little bit different. So can you talk us through that? Like, how did you get to that point? What did that look like for you? Where was the transition?
Like for me, man, like I've always had a heart, like just for people. Like I grew up, and before I became a rugby player, like I wanted to be a teacher because I just love being around people, and I think that's just always been my heart. So yeah, like I was just gonna say, like my values and stuff that I hold myself now, my faith, like it wasn't like this, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, and like people probably saw in front of the camera that I was like that, but deep down in my heart, like it was just a show, you know, like it was just like not being organically me, and that's a lot of stuff, you know, that come to like things that happened in the past that I hadn't healed from. And didn't realize that the way I was and was like acting was because of the stuff that I had been through without even me knowing. And that's just through seeking help, seeking like advice, wisdom around that space. And it's funny, man, like community for me, like when I came into rugby, I was like, community, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to change Wellington, New Zealand, going to do stuff for like all these kids. And like my heart was right. And I had this massive vision, but what I didn't know was that I was like all out here trying to help all these people. And obviously time is so valuable. So I was out here trying to do all these things without me realizing that I wasn't giving any time to my family or my partner, my wife. So I kind of learned pretty quickly and got humbled pretty quickly that when people ask me like what community is for me, community is my family. Like I get my family a check, then I'm able to go do all the stuff that I'm doing now. So that journey of like trying to do everything, please everyone, help people, but it was coming from the right place. But like my family, like I always say keep the main thing, and I wasn't. So I was lucky enough to have best mates that I grew up since I was little, that were kind of like that are wise, and I had people that are wise that kind of just pulled me aside in their own unique way and was like, bruh, like saw your shit out, you know, and even though like my wife was saying it, you know, like, you know, with your partner, you just hear it and it just goes over your shoulder. But I was lucky to have that. And for me, that's kind of been like the overhaul, like my faith. I'm massive on my faith, and I feel like it drives me to be like the best man I can be, the best husband and father. Reading the word just allows me to just like sit in a space where I'm just like grateful and I'm blessed, and just reminds me to keep the main thing. And for me is my family. When my wife, I find joy now, like when my wife's happy and I see my kids just smiles, they're sorted, we got security, food on the table. Like once that's done, then I'm able to go and I'm doing my clothing brand. I'm able to do these community training camps. I mean, and that's where I can start, you know, helping other people. But I feel like so many people out there think community, oh, we got to do all this flash stuff. We got to do all this stuff, put it on social media to flex, you know. But sometimes the intention and the heart's wrong. And I feel like community is actually your own backyard. You know, your close friend circle. It's your family's getting that okay and that right. And once that's sorted, like that love and overflow will just start spreading around into the bigger, wider community.
Yeah, nice, bro. And you know, I hear some like, you know, maturing through that, right? I resonate with some of my own story and that for sure, but also for so many guys, you know, I talk with a lot of men and all the time, and there's often that you know, say yes to everything and want to help and do all the things for everyone else, and maybe at my own expense, and there can be different drivers behind that, but often it's like then I don't have to address my shit, right? Or if I do it, then I get the praise and the kudos. As you said, it might be that social media flex, different for different people. But also what I'm hearing there is this connection to community, first of all, was the community like under my roof, right?
Yeah.
And then on a deeper level, you also said what really needed to happen first was I needed to like actually hear what was in here. And so, you know, that's where I love this idea of like the community, first of all, starts with me. Right, the community is a reflection of the individual, so that's where I start. So that was clearly a big thing for you, as you said, man. To have some mates that you can sit down with and they can go, bruh, we've got some shit to look at, right? Because a lot of men don't have that, right? We have the surface level conversations and mates who we've got their backs, but we don't actually go to our depths. But then that clearly invited you to perhaps, you know, you use this word healing, and I know that's something that you're exploring in your latest release with your closing label. So can you talk us through that? What did that look like for you? You don't have to give us the nitty gritty of the healing stuff, but there was clearly some, I got to look inside here.
Yeah, well, like there's like, you know, like you obviously you got the surface stuff and you think, oh, I'm like this because of this. But in terms of healing is like, I'm probably still healing now. Like it's a journey. Like
it's a journey.
Never, you know what I mean? But like just from my personal experience, for me around healing, what I kind of mean is like the how can I say it? I guess the bad things that I was doing or the negative things that I was doing that affected not only myself but my close ones was actually going to the deep root of what my behaviors. So like you know, the roots of my behaviors, and that was through that was through counsel and stuff like that. And for me to be able to heal was to address that stuff. And there was stuff for me, mate, that I knew in my head I was going to take to the grave. No one knew about. But in order for me to actually heal, in order for me and my wife to be like, to grow in, like I thought we were high school sweethearts. I thought we knew each other. And like now our love and our connections on a whole deeper level because we're having these open conversations around stuff that I was going to take to the grave, you know, like, and she knew nothing about it. And it wasn't until I kind of just let my barriers down, bro, and that obviously vulnerability and trying to just take my armor off and just actually, this is the real me. Like, I was a little kid that was traumatized, and I just held onto that pain as a man, and I didn't realize I just mastered it. So for me, that healing was around addressing stuff in the past, the roots of my behaviors that kind of affected who I was in the past. And once I kind of did that, I'm still healing now, still on that journey, understanding it, but I feel like I'm a better person. My heart's at peace. Like my marriage and my family's like, we're in the best spot we could, you know, like I'm just honestly, bro, just grateful, man. And a lot of that had to do with my faith as well. Like a lot of that had to do with my faith and obviously, you know, like inner freedom, like, and all that stuff. So
well, when you use that language, like you take to my grave and armor, it doesn't really, you know, coincide with something like freedom, right? In a peace, they seem to kind of go away from each other, right? So we can convince ourselves that I'll get that, but I'm gonna still run this operation over here, right?
100%, man.
Yeah.
And like I found like obviously the journey and the testimony that I've been through, sharing it with other people, like I got to a time where I was comfortable in sharing a bit about the journey. Like, you know, like in the past, I probably wouldn't share this on the podcast, but I'm in a space where I can. But like sharing it with other people, sharing my testimony with other people and seeing their light, like, it's like kind of like conviction. They're like, holy shit, this dude's been, like they don't say it, but they're probably thinking, I've been through that. I have never addressed it. And I see this dude and I've been wondering why, like, what's he on? Like, you know, when you see people and you're like, fuck, I want some of that. Like, I want his, what the hell is he on? Yeah. And like, you know, the boys are like, now I know what it is. And I was like, yeah, the hardest thing is that you want it, but the things to do to get to that stage where you want that freedom and you want to be, it takes a lot of self-awareness, a lot of work, a lot of heart surgery, bro. Mentally, it's, like you know, you know, you're in the storms.
Yeah, that's it,
but,
right? We want the good stuff, but we want to bypass the shit to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people don't have to go through it, but people like myself, we don't learn until we go through the storms.
That's it, right? And I think you're speaking to something pretty common and powerful there, right? For a lot of us guys, we look outward, right, and we see, right, oh yeah, okay, he's sweet, he's sorted, he's happy, life's good on the outside. And this is a common thing that I get when I speak to men, like so common. You might look at my life on the outside and think it's sweet, but on the inside it's not. It's this, and this. And that's such a common experience, but no one is voicing it. And so no one understands it's the case. So we keep running that mode, right? And the armor stays on. And I think it's beautiful and powerful for someone like yourself to lead with that. That's what leadership is. You know, what men are constantly waiting for is permission.
Yeah, and to be honest, bro, it's tough. Like, obviously you mentioned rugby, like a warrior sport, and then you've got the warrior, and you're going into battle to smash guys physically, but then on the other side you're this vulnerable guy that's trying to heal and emotion, and then the next week you have to play. So like my journey, I was like it kind of mentally was just like, I'm trying to be this vulnerable dude and sort myself out, but then I have to turn up and smash guys.
Yeah.
You know, and I got to a point where I was playing rugby games, bro, and I was like helping the guy out, my opponent, and my teammates would be like, what the hell are you up to, bro? Like, you know, like, because you know how you're supposed to hate the opposition. So that journey, that's how it kind of affected my career. But now I've got tools and stuff like that where I can deal with that, and my mind switch from being a warrior to when I switch off into being who I am, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's so beautiful and poignant and so relevant, because we all have those modes, right? Yours is very obvious. You have a bunch of other dudes running at you to smash you, you know, like it doesn't matter what code we're talking about, but if it's physical like that, that's it. You have to be a warrior, and you have to get into fighting mode, right? It's in I suppose an analogy, it's kill or be killed, and that is so primal to us humans, to men, the masculine. But also what's primal is to be a father and a caregiver and to love for people around us. And one of the things I think we've struggled to educate on at an individual, at a family, at a community level, is that ability to switch modes, right? And it's very obvious for someone like you in the sense that you got to go out and smash that guy, and then maybe the next moment pick him up. But either way, at some point, let's say you're going to go to the end of the stadium after the game and give your cuddle, your kid a cuddle or a photo with a fan or that kind of thing. And that's those modes, right? But we all have that. It might be kicking ass all day at work, right? Going into quote unquote warrior mode, and then being able to shift and transition into what mode is required of you. And you might not be a family man, but I would imagine if you're a single dude, there's still some care for this body that you're you know, walking around this planet, right? I love that. And the I think the courage to go first, to lead, and realize that there's influence, right? There's ways that we can influence, and those are pretty powerful ones.
And I think that's like a critical, like a skill mentally, bro, to be able to switch. Like I know playing footy, like when we lose a game, like I'm at a stage now where I know when to, like, if we lose, like especially when we lose, I try not take those feelings that I have, disappointment, to my family, or when I go home to see my kids. They help, you know, because they bring a smile to my face. But there's sometimes guys that I see that lose, that are angry after the game. They go home and it affects, like, they're angry at home, like, you know, and I think that's not, you know, that's not like okay. So I think it's a mental kind of skill set to be able to do that. And for people that go to work, you know, they might have had a bad day at work and then come home and then take the bad day out on, you know, the family. So it's just being aware of that and what works for you to be able to switch in from, you know, different modes that you have to.
And is that something, you know, if we come into the All Black setup, it's from the outside somewhat famed for being, you know, having this amazing culture and so on. You know, it's funny, like okay, watched a lot of TV, and there's this Amazon Prime series, All or Nothing. There was a series on the All Blacks a little while ago, and then there's all these other ones, AFL, NFL, and like in the Premier League in England. And I watched these other multi-billion-dollar setups, and they don't have anything, it would seem, in the way of culture and like actual psychology and mental skills, right? It's the coach who's paid millions and millions of pounds or dollars a year, just giving a team talk like when we were 13 years old. But it seems like in the All Blacks there's a little bit of, hey, we need to look after these humans. Was that an environment where you did pick up some of these skill sets?
Yeah, well, a lot of it, a lot of the skill sets I kind of picked up just through going through the storms and learning that way. But with the All Blacks, mate, like we got great resources, got great people here that actually and they're actually transferable skills into life. Actually, it's just I learned differently, and the language they use, couldn't understand it, but now I do. But they do teach us and give us tools to how to be great humans. But also on the flip side, the high performance side, they teach us how to navigate spaces where we're under pressure, realizing what our triggers are or our cues are when we're in that state, and then how we're able to transfer from being, they call it being in the red, transfer from being in that red state to quickly limit that time so you're back into a blue state where you're calm and steady and you're able to make decisions quicker. So we've got mental skills coach that does all that for us, and we talk around the game. But like if you're wise enough, you can use those mental skills to transfer into real life and even business. So, mate, like we've got great resources here, and but they always say, they're with an All Black, like if you're a dickhead, you'll get found out pretty quick, and they're big on driving great humans. So.
Yeah, great humans make great All Blacks, right? And I think, again, pull out the word All Blacks and put it anywhere, because, that story that you just shared about the, seeing red or in the blue, we could take that out of this conversation and place it anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. If you're getting into a conflict or an argument with your partner, right, and you're getting triggered and you're going to that red zone where you want to react and you think, oh, maybe I do that historically. And then after I shut down or I fight back and get defensive. And then later on, I think, what did I do that? Or I'm waiting for them to apologize. I'm still in that mode. It's all very relative, right? And those are most definitely transferable. Yeah.
100%,
so then,
bro.
You said, as part of this, your own healing, people around you, your faith, your friends, old friends, obviously setups like, the All Blacks where there is things that are transferable. And you mentioned in there some counsel. So with part of your healing, I'm interested to know, was that something that you did seek external support with?
Yeah. And it's crazy, man, because obviously, like, I guess people, I don't know if it's just me and with my view on this, but I feel like people see seeking counsel as like a bad thing. Oh shit, he's not okay. But like I still get counseled once a week, like, and it's through just coffee catch-ups, and counsel is actually just catching up with your boys and actually having those deep convos. But like people got their perception, they're like, oh, I don't want to get counseled because I'm too ashamed. Like, I've got nothing wrong with me. But man, like once I kind of experienced like consistently with it, like once a week, or man, it's been the best thing. I'm like, man, I don't know why I didn't do it earlier. And I remember a couple of years ago, Nehe Milner-Skara kind of was saying that he sees people, like catches up for coffee, and he said, bro, it's like the best thing that he does. And I was like, like I was one of those guys, like shit, like. But then I got it, and I was just like, bro, like this is actually really like valuable. Like it kind of, when I do go, it kind of just resets me. It's like a checkup, like getting your stuff sorted, making sure you're good. So yeah, that's kind of,
and often it's simply stuff that we've never learned, right? And I think what I'm hearing in there, and please correct me or steer me differently, but what I'm hearing there is, on some level, an opportunity to get off what's on our chest, right? And I like to think of the analogy, we talk about getting stuff off our chest, and I hear, like with guys that I work with, after a time there's often this like, I feel lighter. And I think about it like, well, if all the shit that you've been through, you haven't dealt with, it's just like putting it in a backpack. And the more you put in there, that bag gets heavy. I'm just carting that around, right? So it's the ability to unload that backpack a little bit. Often, you know, we've learnt this thing in culture in New Zealand, Australia, or if I do that, I'm weak, or maybe I'm burdening them, right? But like, one, there's people whose job it is to be unburdened by it because they are professionals. And two, there's also people in your corner who, by the sounds of it for you, you chose to enact that, who want to support you, even if it is just listening and going, that sounds shit, bro.
Yeah. And even if it's just me talking and they don't even say anything, because sometimes they don't have answers, but like just holding space and allowing me to just talk and vent and just share, like, you know, like that's sometimes enough.
And so, because you're receiving that, let's say, so do you think, you know, being able to do that, all these benefits, right? Healing some stuff, navigating shit from the game in the weekend, whatever it is, the pressures. But then also, do you think those are skills, both being able to share and go to your depths, but then kind of mirror that a little bit, that you've been able to take to your relationship, you know, like, oh, I can hold space for my wife here, you know, like actually being able to then show up differently in your relationship?
Yeah, man. And that's like, you know, like that's still something that I need to be better in, is that, like, you know, catch up with these people and try and grow and, you know, and that stuff. But then when wifey comes and she's had a bad day, she wants to talk about it, I'm just like, goes through here, goes out there, you know. Like, but like, and while I'm talking now, it's just like, it's check me before I go home, because you know, I put all this effort, like I mentioned before, I put all this effort into other people, but got to make sure home's right. And yeah, I'm like you, mate. Like, it's around holding space at home too, and not just you know, like for myself and other people.
Yeah, and I think perhaps a beautiful connection there was, you said sometimes they don't have answers, right? And I think that's a really important point to touch on, is that often we can see, you know, like, this is a shit experience. I want it to change. There needs to be some solutions. Sometimes there isn't an obvious solution, but the solution is, let me first not carry it around and bring it into every interaction, right? So just let go of it a little bit. And then there might be some solutions. Go and do this, have this conversation, practice some meditation or something, but simply unloading a little bit, right? And then letting go of the fact that there might need to be a solution. Because of course, then that flips around, right? I'm listening to my partner, and if I'm in the mode that everything needs to be fixed, often I'm going to miss that perhaps what they needed was simply
just holding space.
To listen. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%, bro. And I think with like these people where you go and talk, and then feel like it's wise as well. Like when you want wisdom and you want counsel, like you need the right people to go to that. Like, for example, like if I want, like I'm talking around the kids, or simple, just as an example, I'm talking around kids, but I'm talking and asking someone that doesn't have kids for wisdom. Yeah. Like, you know, you always got to look at the fruit of someone where you're seeking counsel and wisdom. So I think, like there's people where you can sit and hold space, but sometimes seeking wisdom is looking above you and people that have actually been through it, or have been through that journey, or the knowledge.
Yeah, and I think, you know, coming back to that term community, you know, the way I look at community is that those are the things that are available, right? And for me, like in an ideal world, they're not only available, but we are, it's a logical choice, you know, like, right, I'm struggling with something, whereas an elder, right, someone with wisdom or ability to sit with me, as opposed to, like, you know, as you said, I just got to carry it around and deal with it or whatever, right, that old mode. And hopefully that's something that we can, again, you know, simply lead by example, right? By doing it and sharing that we're doing it. There doesn't need to be all the detail in there. It's just the context around it, right? And so then this is something, you know, you've spoken about, like meeting for coffee with friends. And I remember reading an article, it must be a couple of years ago now, where it was about, you know, in the All Black environment, you had been doing that. I think it was with Anton Leonard Brown. Maybe the article was with him, and I think it was, the context was you had invited him to sit down once a week and let's just chat and connect beyond the footy and the pressures and all that stuff, and connect as humans, not just about, you know, like the shit that we do over here on the weekend or whatever, but like what's going on.
Bro, I'm like, and it's simple. Like for me, like I know, like when I ask someone, like I'm real, like if I'm making sure, just checking up on people, I asked them, how are you? And then they're like, yeah, I'm good. I'm all good. And I was like, and I always come back with the second thing. I'm like, nah, how are you? How's the heart? And then that's when it's like, bro, like this, and then just, that's like, because I know when people do that to me, like people go, oh, how are you? And I'm like, all good. And they're like, no, how are you? For real.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh. And then that's when, so like with the coffee chats with me and Anton, like you're bang on. Like we go and talk, and we just talk around life, how we're doing, what's been happening, pretty much just talking about everything, bro, but not even necessarily about rugby. And you know, the two of us caught up, and then it just grew to more and more. And I think, yeah, and that's where like me and Anton's relationship started, was just through those kind of vulnerable conversations. And I know he's massive of mental health and people being vulnerable and stuff like that. And I think that stemmed from like our conversations and how much it's helped us.
Yeah, and again, simplicity, right? Like there's a bunch of shit that we do and we take on, and humans are impacted by life, right? And if we can't learn, especially as men, because we've often, you know, very young kind of had that side pushed away and shamed a little bit, right? To experience emotions and so on. You know, if you don't work, like if, you know, you've had some injuries, if you have your leg in a cast for 6 weeks, it weakens, it atrophies, right? If you don't use something for a while, it weakens. And if we haven't used that emotional literacy, then it can be clunky and uncomfortable and, oh man, really? But you build it over time. But we can see, man, this is a string to my bow that I can add, but it doesn't need to move a mountain. It can be a simple conversation. Right. And I love the safety that is clearly in those conversations. Right. Yeah.
But I'm a pretty simple dude, like you say, mate.
But there's that simple invitation. I really like that, as you said, because how common is that? Right. And I agree with this myself. I have a rule that when I'm asked the question, how are you? I answer it honestly as best I can. If I ever hear myself say the word good, it's like an invitation to dig a little bit deeper, because that's that answer that doesn't say anything. Really? Yeah. Right?
100.
Yeah. And so the second question there is a very powerful one. Cool, I hear that one. That's just a noise, right? Like two cavemen going, we've greeted each other. And now, how are you? How's your heart? It's a powerful question.
Yeah, 100%, man. And like, I'll be interested to see when people go, oh, like, because obviously we're so used to as humans going, oh, how's things? Everyone always says, good, man. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see how's things? And you're just like, man, actually, average day, like, I just need a chat. People will be like,
well, I get that, because I'll pause. So my nature, I'm very considered, right? So I'll sit and consider in general. And, you know, speaking to what you were talking about before, you know, like in terms of I noticed some behaviors and I needed to dig to the root of them, right? Not all behaviors are, you know, good or bad. They just are. And for me, my self-awareness journey was very much that, looking at all the things. I'm very considered. And when I look back, because as a kid, I was quite shy and purified of things. And it invited me just to sit and kind of observe the world. And so it was shy, but also I developed this skill, right? And that's what really supported me when I kind of dove into self-awareness. Like, why do I do this shit? Same as you. And that little consideration is a tool now that I can go, but I tell you what, it does. It shits people a little bit, or it frightens them, because they'll be like, how are you going? And I'll stop and I consider. And this is the kind of thing that's happened many times. I remember this conversation not that long ago, and I said, tired, like, and I just rattled off a few things that were honest for me, but because there was a consideration little period there, and also I said the word tired, the person panicked a little bit. They were like, oh shit, something wrong? And I was like, no, you asked the question, and so I wanted to answer it honestly.
100. And I think people just like, they're so conditioned to hearing good, that when you don't say good and you say other things, they automatically think the shit's hit the storm, what's going on? But in fact, you're just tired and
it's good or it's bad, right? And oh shit. And that's a pretty simple life to live. If it's not good, it's bad, and I want to run from that, perhaps, especially if I'm not yet that comfortable with sitting with my own, you know, like bad or whatever that is, right? So one thing I want to touch on here, you said, you know, when it came to your relationship with your wife, it's a long relationship, you knew everything about each other, but there's some stuff that I'm going to take to the grave, right? And until you explored that, and this is one of the things I see for so many of us guys, we want depth in our life and our relationships, but we haven't yet gone to those depths in ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm hearing there, right? Is like, oh, I need to go and explore my depths if I really want to create that in my world, especially in my relationship. Did you find that was kind of parallel when you started exploring more of you? It created more openness and depth in your relationship.
Yeah, 100%, bro. 100%.
And was that obvious to your wife, do you think?
Well, like exploring that.
Yeah, and that you were doing that, and then you were open to more, right? Because as you said, there's her side, of course, but if you're like guarded and going, this is shit I'm taking to my grave, she's going to notice that on some level.
Yeah, well, like she didn't know. Oh, like, you know, I had a wall, you know, like when we came into like conflict or whatever, it was just like I don't want to talk, you know, and you know, those like certain behaviors, it's like, why am I like that? You know, when, like I can just talk. I hated talking. I hated conflict. But like as soon as I started to do that stuff, I started to be open with my wife. I started to be vulnerable with my wife, and that's not something that she's often seen often from me. You know, like so. You know, she saw that and she's like, babe, I love it, and you know, and do more of it whenever you feel something. Just tell her. So like. We're real open. I've learned to be open with my wife, and I feel like that's built like real good trust. Still working on it, man. Like I don't have all shit sorted, but those are the little tools that I've come to realize. Nice. It's easy to say, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah, and I think very importantly there, we've all got shit, right? Like no one gets to a point where we've clocked life and it's like, see ya. That's it, bro. But we can educate ourselves. And so my question there is, what you're working on it, and it was very challenging, and it still is, but has it got easier? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like even though you play a very challenging game of footy, I'm assuming it's got a little bit easier compared to the first time, let's say you put on the black jersey, right? Because you become more skilled at doing the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe a bad analogy.
Yeah, I reckon it gets harder with the All Blacks, man. Like, because in the All Blacks, it's easy to get there. Oh, it's not easy. It's hard to get there, but it's harder to maintain it and be there for a while, especially for such a prestigious, like club in the jersey. So being able to stay in the All Blacks for a long time is harder. And obviously with the young, freakish talent, the athlete, kind of the body athletes that are coming through, like we got to innovate and navigate our space and improve our game to be able to stay in here for a long time. So yeah, it doesn't get easier; it gets harder.
Yeah, maybe it becomes more familiar in terms of the setup coming into the game. There's not as much nerves or that kind of stuff. I hear your point very much. Okay, so then to kind of wrap things up, I want to explore this a little bit because you know, like I'm 39. I'm a Kiwi. I grew up playing rugby, and I understand men around our generation-ish, and I think in generations past, the All Blacks were often this big pillar of New Zealand, definitely a brand, right? But more so, almost like this golden shining example of manhood and masculinity, and kind of the extensions of that were like pretty simple, but I would say, you know, they were more like tough, unemotional, stoic, you know, just a farmer who can do all the things, and not sitting down in the middle of the week and having chats with their mates about stuff like that that's going on. So can you speak to, because clearly there's some of you that are changing that by choice or, you know, externally or choice internally in terms of how you want to be. So did you, what was it that you saw growing up as this kind of idea of manhood? Was it reflected in that black jersey? And yeah, do you see a change in that happening?
Yeah, well, I highly watch All Blacks games. I only watched All Blacks games when my favorite players were playing. Like I couldn't watch it. The only time I could watch it when I was a kid was when I had to go to the pub because with my old man, because we didn't have a TV or could afford Sky, you know. So I kind of never really learned around masculinity like from the All Blacks. It was more so with my old man and our family, you know, like he's Samoan, quiet, never showed emotion, you know, like just real humble dude. So that's where I kind of picked it up. But on your point around past, like the shining light around how masculinity should be. But I reckon all those old guys that they're staunch on the field, I reckon off the field they were just like me too. But I reckon the biggest difference is that there was no social media around. You know, like you have All Blacks content creators that capture the human side of people. And I think for so long, you know, we've had guys that are legends of the game and legends of the jersey, that what was only put out was the staunch and the like that side, and nothing around like the human and what they did. Whereas in these days now, like obviously myself, like I'm here doing TikTok dancing, like, you know, like fun, the human side of it, and people are not conditioned to seeing that because they've seen for so long an All Black that's just like just one way. I don't think it's like a deliberate thing of trying to make a point. I think boys are just being who they really are, and I think social media is just around that. It's capturing that.
And as you said before, right, that you know, you got to be a warrior, right, and we often want you to be that, and then we kind of extrapolate that to the rest of life. And it turns out there's a whole expanse in being a human. You know, it's something that I hear a lot from guys. It's this thing that I have a little internal giggle at, but do my best in the moment to be compassionate with, where it's like, you know, I'm actually really sensitive. You know, I'm actually really, and it's like, of course, bro, you're a human. That's what humans are. We have the warrior and we have the lover and the caregiver, right? And I love that everyone can showcase that, right? Be it on social media or in their world, but you most definitely are choosing to showcase that and lead that. And I love that, and I appreciate you for it. And I'm very glad that I get to witness that, because if nothing else, I know that there's many little boys and girls and humans and big ones witnessing that and maybe learning a little bit too. Like, holy shit, I've got some shit too. Absolutely.
Man.
Ardie Savea, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Huge gratitude to you for this and for who you choose to be in the world. I do really admire you and take a lot of inspiration for how you choose to show up. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, bro.
You bloody legend. You've been listening to the Everyday Legends podcast, the show that is dedicated to championing everyday men and supporting you in getting more from life, love, and the everyday. If this podcast has benefited you, if you enjoyed this, then my request, my invitation is to share this with a man that you think will also benefit from this and enjoy this. Remember, please, wherever you find your podcast, to like us, subscribe to us, click download first, leave us a review. All those things both make sure you get all the updates when they come in, and it supports us in getting this podcast in front of more everyday men that could use it. Until next time, I've been Mike Campbell. Remember to build that legendary integrity, and remember, everyday men, we thrive when we are championed, when we are supported, when we are appreciated and recognized for who we choose to be in the world. Here is my invitation to both show up and be that everyday legend, and to continue to champion the everyday men in your life.